Hello, I'm Kaiser and welcome to Moose Reads. Before I get started, I want to say that the opinions I give here are my own opinions. They are extremely subjective. If I dislike a book, it is not a reflection on the author, and it is not a reflection on people who do like it. Different people have different tastes, and that's okay. Today, I will be reviewing Martin the Warrior by Brian Jacques. This is the 6th book released, and the 2nd book chronologically in the Redwall series. It is a fantasy novel. The description says, "On the shore of the eastern sea, in a cold stone fortress, a stoat named Badrang holds dozens of innocent creatures as slaves, part of his scheme to build an empire where he will rule as unquestioned tyrant. Among those slaves is a mouse named Martin, who has a warrior's heart and a burning desire for freedom. Freedom not only for himself, but for all of Badrang's victims. There is no risk he will not take, no battle he will not fight, to end the stoat's evil reign, and in the process regain the sword of his father, Luke the Warrior, the sword that Badrang stole from him when he was but a lad." Honestly, this is a 3-star read for me. I know I absolutely loved it as a kid, but it just doesn't hit the same way for me now. I was really hoping to still love this book, but people change, tastes change, and here we are. All the same, I'm going to keep going with my attempt to finish this series, even if it does look to be a very middling series for me. I'm not really sure what to say. It was a perfectly fine fantasy adventure. The characters were generally likable, and their actions and motivations made sense. Hell, I even liked the hare character in this one, and that's unusual. The plot had plenty to keep the reader engaged. I just wasn't feeling it. I mostly suspect the issue is that there are certain things I'm drawn to in a fantasy, themes, struggles, relationships, or nuance, and these books just don't have those, or don't explore them in ways that are satisfying to me. Overall, this is a pretty straightforward fantasy. The good guys and bad guys are clearly defined, the lines are drawn, and it delivers exactly what it promises. If that sounds like a good time to you, I encourage you to give it a shot. Although, please keep in mind that Jacques is an author who spells out accents, so if you don't enjoy that, this book and this series aren't for you. There's really only one thing I want to discuss, and it involves some major spoilers. If you don't want spoilers, now is the time to pause or close the video. For everyone else, let's talk details. There was one aspect of this book that kind of bothered me. The general plot is that Badrang is a stoat who used to be a pirate, but after his ship scuppered on the shore, he got it in his mind to become a tyrant. He has a number of slaves, takes more at any opportunity, and forces them to build his fortress, Marshank. The slaves, reasonably, are miserable, and in the course of the book they take steps to regain their freedom and ensure that Badrang cannot enslave any other creatures. Like I said, it's a very straightforward plot. Slavery is bad, people who enslave others are bad, they should be stopped. And yet, there were some things at the end that kind of felt like mixed messaging. Sometimes, books will enforce certain views on morality more subtly. They might not say what they mean outright, but the narrative choices lead the reader to feel a certain way about various thoughts or actions by the way it rewards or punishes characters for them. Because these messages aren't overt, they're a lot easier to argue that they don't exist, and it can be difficult to explain why you believe they're present. My issue with Martin the Warrior falls into this gray area of implicit condemnation, so bear with me. There are 2 major characters that die in this book, and both deaths seem to serve the purpose of punishing certain characters. I think what Jacques was trying to condemn was the desire for revenge, but I didn't feel like that came across well, and there is an alternative possibility that feels considerably more muddled. The first character death belongs to Feldo, a squirrel who spent most of his life as a slave. Once he and all the other slaves have escaped from Marshank, he sets about training the escapees to fight, with the intention of killing Badrang. The book makes a lot of noise about how he wants to kill Badrang out of revenge, but it doesn't do enough work to make his need for revenge seem disproportional. Badrang kept slaves and had them beaten regularly. Once the slaves he had were free, it was only a matter of time before he recaptured them, captured new ones, or both. Saying he needs to die isn't a matter of blind vengeance, it's a statement of necessity. But the book wants me to think that Feldo is taking things too far. Other characters show concern about what he's doing, and he starts acting a bit secretive as he sneaks away to harass Marshank on his own multiple times. There are two things Feldo does that can be argued as a step too far, but I just didn't feel like they were enough. First, Feldo goes to Marshank at night to throw spears over the walls. He kills several of Badrang's horde and manages to very nearly spear Badrang himself. Once he knows Badrang's position, he throws several spears at him, but is unable to reach him as he hides behind sturdy furniture. Badrang taunts him about missing, and he replies that he has all night to perfect his aim. And then he returns to camp, happily leaving Badrang to worry all night about getting killed with a well-aimed spear that will never come. And yeah, he's employing psychological torture here, and torture is bad, I don't care who you're doing it to. Yet, I find it difficult to say he's really done much harm here. Badrang is inside when Feldo leaves. He is only at risk because he is in direct line of sight of an open door and was shouting at Feldo, giving away his exact position. All he needs to do to not have to fear for his life all night is move and keep his mouth shut. If he spends the whole night worried he'll be killed, it's because he's a moron. It's a little hard to blame Feldo for that. Also, the book doesn't really condemn Feldo's actions here, treating it in a more humorous light. Certainly it's debatable, but the tone of the book with regards to Feldo's actions here seemed more amused than disappointed, so we're not really even being asked to blame him for this one. The second thing is just before he dies. Badrang has laid a trap for him, burying several members of his horde in the sands around Marshank to ambush him when he returns. But before Badrang can spring the trap, he gets into an insult exchange, which he loses. Feldo challenges him to come out and fight him one-on-one if he's not a coward, and he doesn't have much choice but to comply. And Feldo beats him handily, but rather than stab him with his spear once he's got him pinned, he begins beating him violently with the blunt end. He explicitly states that he's giving him a taste of his own medicine, and because he's intent on doing so, Badrang is able to spring the trap and Feldo is killed while Badrang escapes. This, for me, works better to illustrate his revenge clouding his judgment, but even it doesn't really do the job. Yeah, he should have turned the spear over and ended it. Maybe that would have brought the whole thing to an early conclusion, but that wasn't really a guarantee. Also, Feldo was almost certainly going to die by that point anyway, so whether he did the right thing and killed Badrang outright or tried to enact a bit of revenge, he still would have been punished by the narrative. Even if he'd killed Badrang, he was surrounded by horde rats that probably would have killed him, and since this book technically has two villains, and the second was still safe inside Marshank, there probably still would have been a threat, and, consequently, a necessary battle. The second death belongs to Rose, Martin's would-be love. She was not on a quest for revenge, she was just there to help Martin and all the creatures who had or would be hurt by Badrang's tyranny. But Martin was on a revenge quest, and he couldn't be killed in the end, so Rose is killed instead. This treatment of Rose is its own issue, but it very much seems to serve as punishment for Martin, and Martin's revenge plot absolutely does not do the work. As a young mouse, Martin's father Luke went off to fight sea rats. That's more or less what Luke did, kill sea rats because all sea rats are evil. It's kind of funny, really, because Luke's blanket hatred of all sea rats and his quest to kill them seems a lot more over-the-top revenge plot than anything either Feldo or Martin get up to, but at least in this book, it isn't condemned in the least. At any rate, when he left, he gave Martin his sword, asking him to protect their home and never let anyone take the sword from him. Martin is then captured by Badrang as a young mouse unprepared to fight off a villainous horde, and Badrang takes his sword. So Martin's revenge quest is to kill Badrang and take back his father's sword. And that is his driving goal. He says he intends to recover his father's sword multiple times, but rarely says anything about rescuing the current slaves or preventing any in the future. I am absolutely willing to accept that Martin wanting to kill Badrang strictly to take his father's sword back is a bad motivation. But whether or not it's his explicit intention, something that's at least mildly debatable, he is still saving others from slavery. So, we're left with the old moral conundrum: can you justify doing the right thing for the wrong reasons? Personally, I'm inclined to say yes. The right thing is the right thing, no matter why. I mean, I'm not going to say the ends justify the means, see my earlier opinions on torture, but this is a case of the ends justifying the ends, and that math checks out for me. Which means that when Rose dies at the end, and Martin is sad and heartbroken, and he can no longer return with her, or even without her, to her peaceful home in Noonvale, it feels like an odd kind of condemnation. To be clear, Martin's pain is the point. She's been traveling with a mole the entire book, and she has a brother there as well, and we get almost no reference to how they are impacted by her death. But we spend a significant time with how bad Martin feels having lost her. If we contrast this with the characters who fight but are not punished, it starts to feel hinky. Because the book culminates in a full-out battle, and the good guys slaughter the Horde to a beast. No prisoners taken. But their explicit motives were to protect creatures from slavery, not revenge, so I guess it's okay. Look, I'm fine with a revenge is wrong plotline, but you have to tell me why revenge is wrong for it to work. Revenge is wrong because I said so isn't a valid concept. Usually these kinds of stories take steps to show that the person seeking revenge has lost something important in that pursuit. Either they take their revenge too far, killing people who are only tangentially guilty, or they lose track of what they are trying to protect by enacting their revenge, racking up collateral damage in their pursuit. That doesn't happen here. Sure, more creatures die because Feldo didn't kill Badrang when he had the chance, but he also only had that chance because he was seeking revenge. So there's no meaningful difference. Because Jacques doesn't do the work to convince me their revenge has gone too far, it ends up feeling like a reasonable response to Badrang's tyranny is what's being condemned. It feels more like the desire to kill Badrang is the problem, but killing Badrang is necessary to protect everyone from slavery. There is one other aspect of the plot that kind of makes me feel like this desire to kill someone is the problem more than the revenge concept. That's Brome. Brome is Rose's brother. The party gets split pretty early on, and Brome ends up staying with Feldo, so he spends most of the book with him and near Marshank, and Brome doesn't kill anyone. At some point, Brome and Feldo are talking a little ways from the camp, and they spot a team of Horde beasts tracking the wagon they used to help rescue some slaves earlier. They take action to lead the villains away, and once they've gotten far enough, Feldo kills several of them. Brome sees death up close for the first time in his life and is horrified, realizing that he could never kill anyone, no matter how horrible. And that's fine. These kinds of stories often overlook how difficult murder can be, so it's nice to see some consideration given to it here, even if it's very little consideration overall. Instead of killing, Brome takes up the job of field medic. So later, when Feldo has gotten killed and the rest of the fighters have charged into battle to recover his corpse, he's there patching people up. When they get trapped and are about to be killed, he takes up a weapon and fights, but before he can kill anyone, the bad guy at his feet calls out to him for mercy. Earlier, Brome disguised himself as a horde rat to try to free the slaves that were still inside Marshank, and he and this guy, I think it was a weasel, had a friendly interaction. So the weasel addresses him as a friend, and now that reinforcements have arrived and the tables have turned, Brome decides to spare his life. This is one of those gray areas for me on the moral spectrum. The guy was just trying to kill him. He clearly recognized him as the guy he hung out with that one time, but he was also clearly willing to murder his matey. And when Brome met him before, while in disguise, he patched him up after Feldo put a spear through his foot, while the weasel attempted to murder an unarmed squirrel maid. But at the point where Brome spares him, he is on the ground and has seemingly been disarmed. So, is it right to let him go? He's just going to hurt more people down the line, killing, torturing, and possibly enslaving anyone who crosses his path. If the options are to just let him go free or to kill him, then it kind of seems like killing him is the right thing to do. However, if we are meant to believe the explicit goal of killing a bad person so that they can't hurt anyone is bad, as compared to the nebulous desire to protect the innocent and killing people as a necessary but undesirable consequence being good, Rome's actions make sense. He is morally right, he doesn't want to kill anybody. In that moment, no one was in danger from the weasel, so killing him wasn't necessary to protecting people. And he was spared. The only reason for Brome to have killed him instead was a desire to kill. The problem is that this book can't divorce one desire from the other, no matter how badly it would like to. I want to make it clear that in real life I'm opposed to the death penalty. There are various reasons for this, and mostly they don't apply in this fictional scenario, but in general, I'm not the kind of person to say bad people deserve to die. But the situation as presented in this book kind of necessitates it. The bad guys are going to keep doing what they've been doing until they are stopped. There are only two ways to stop them: prison or death. The good guys don't have any means of imprisoning one person, let alone an entire horde. So, in order to protect peaceful creatures from abuse, enslavement, and death, the only solution is to kill the villains. Trying to say it's wrong to want to kill them, but right to want to protect innocent creatures is just nonsense. Okay, let's talk about Rose's death, because she was really done dirty. We spend probably half the book with her. She's an important character with people she loves, people who love her, and her own wants and needs. But the moment she dies, she's almost entirely reduced to Martin's girlfriend. This, despite the fact that she and Martin barely flirt in the book. Their relationship is only differentiated from the general friendship shared by everyone else because Martin stutters when he first meets her and blushes occasionally. Her brother and a mole who has known her entire life are also at the battle, but we barely get any mention of their grief before they've left the story entirely. These books hop all around in perspective, so there's no reason we couldn't have had a scene back in Noonvale where she is properly buried and mourned. But we don't, because neither she nor anyone else who loves her matters anymore. We are only asked to care about Martin and his pain. One of the biggest problems I have with Rose's death is that it makes no sense within the context of the story. We've seen that she is every bit as peaceful as her brother. At various points, Martin has threatened other creatures that were antagonizing them, and we saw a bird eating some lizards that were going to eat her and her party, but each time she asks Martin to show mercy and turns her face away from the violence. She is not a fighter. So when the moles tunnel into Marshank during the final battle and she comes up with them, I had no idea why she was even there. And she immediately runs into Badrang as he hopes to escape through that tunnel, fails to hurt him at all, and is killed. There's literally only one reason for her to be there, and it is to be killed so Martin can be sad. It's ridiculous, and I'm mad about it. At any rate, that's all I have to say about Martin the Warrior. If you liked this video, I hope you'll watch more in the future. Thanks for watching this one. Bye.